Good morning. Welcome to Unfiltered Vision News, bringing you the news unfiltered Monday through Friday, 7 to 9 a.m. Eastern. My name is Dr. Ashaki Noni Nichols, and I will be your host. Thank you so much for joining us here on Tuesday. And this is Tell It All Tuesday, where I really try to dive into some interesting articles, I would say, to bring you more news that you're not being told, probably. I'm just saying. It happens. It happens. So, with that, we're going to get into our first article, but I like to play a little bit of a bumper to get into Tell It All Tuesday, just to kind of set the stage. And with that, we're going to get into Tell It All Tuesday. And I've got a message from Jay saying, "Good morning, beautiful Black Americans." And good morning to you, sir. And thank you so much for joining us on YouTube. So, yes, we are live on YouTube, Facebook, and X. Still working on Facebook to get a little bit more visible outside of the people who just know me. So, with that, let's get into our first video from the People's Voice. This is definitely a channel that brings us interesting information. And this is Sean from the People's Voice, and he is on X.
And replace them with a new technology, electronic tattoos embedded under your skin. According to Gates, life as you know it will soon be impossible without one. Digital IDs fused with your body, a modern mark of the beast, controlling access to everything, work, travel and money. We've been warning about the elites' beast system for years, and now it's coming to life. The question is, will you resist or be forced to comply? Before we dive in, a quick word about our partner, VP.net, the next generation of private browsing. VP.net is the only VPN designed...
That's... What? What?
For over a decade, smartphones have been our constant companion. Our link to email, social media, maps, banking, and everything. They've shaped how we live, work, and interact. But according to Bill Gates, that era is about to end. And not by accident. Gates is determined to kill off the smartphone and replace it with something far more invasive, electronic tattoos. Technology designed to merge with your body. Developed by Chaotic Moon and later snapped up by Accenture, these tattoos promise instant communication, internet access, and health monitoring without a single screen. But here is where it gets dark. They're not in your pocket, they're under your skin, a permanent addition to your body's ecosystem. Always on, always connected, always watching. The elites are selling it as sleek, subtle, and more convenient and intuitive than anything we've seen before. Tiny nanocapacitors power the system. No bulky batteries, no visible device. Just an invisible tether fusing your body to the grid. Once this tech becomes your digital ID, there will be no logging out, no turning it off, and no opting out. This isn't convenience, this is control. The next phase of the beast system is already here. And make no mistake, Gates is about to make his move. The question isn't if it will happen, it's whether you'll be ready to resist when it does. Regina E. Dugan, the first female director of DARPA, the shadowy military agency RFK exposed for spraying chemtrails on America, and a long list of other crimes, has already declared victory. She boasts that we'll be queuing up to be branded with electronic tattoos. Not because we desire them, but because without them, we'll be locked out of society itself.
Well, a researcher at the University of Illinois, his name is Dr. Rogers, what he discovered is that he could use standard CMOS techniques to make islands of high-performance silicon connected by accordion-like structures that would allow it to stretch up to 200% and still be performing. And what he did is he founded a company and they started making electronic tattoos. So I'm wearing one here on my arm.
Do we have a camera to get a...
This is a developmental system made by MC10, and it has an antenna and some sensors embedded in it. And what we plan to do is work with them to advance a tattoo that could be used for authentication.
And the most chilling part? The creators of this beast system openly admit they're targeting children, conditioning the next generation to accept a future where control is embedded under their skin from day one.
Now, it may be true that 10 to 20-year-olds don't want to wear a watch on their wrist, but you can be sure that they'll be far more interested in wearing an electronic tattoo, if only to piss off their parents. Right?
And that can have a design, right? Because
Sure.
they would certainly want some kind of cool design.
Options,
right?
options. And that's something that you wear, but you could also imagine including authentication in just your daily habits. So I take a vitamin every morning. What if I could take vitamin authentication?
What?
Vitamin authentication. Look, I have one right here. Well, here, I'll let you hold it. Would you like to hold it?
I'll hold it.
Okay. So this
You guys see it?
This pill has a small chip inside of it with a switch. It also has what amounts to an inside-out potato battery. When
Really
you
small.
swallow it, the acids in your stomach serve as the electrolyte,
That's what do it.
and they power it up, and the switch goes on and off. And it creates an 18-bit ECG-like signal in your body, and essentially your entire body becomes your authentication token. Yes, this is true. Okay?
This isn't progress. It's the beast system made flesh. A digital brand, a modern mark of the beast, reducing every man, woman and child to tag property on a global grid of control. And without that mark, you won't be able to authenticate yourself. No proof of identity, no access to work, to money, to travel, to life itself.
So it's really true. So what this means is that becomes my first superpower. I really want this superpower. It means that my arms are like wires, my hands are like alligator clips. When I touch my phone, my computer, my door, my car, I'm authenticated in. First superpower. Like, I want that.
So we're not shipping that right away.
Yeah, no. We're not shipping that right away. But it
But
sounds like...
this is FDA cleared?
So here's the thing. This is not science fiction. This pill was actually made by a company called Proteus, and they've developed it for medical applications. That pill has been CE stamped and cleared by the FDA. You can take 30 of those per day for the rest of your life.
And that's the plan, folks. Gates' pet scientists and DARPA's shadowy spooks are rolling out tech that's already sliding through FDA approval. Devices you'll brand into your skin, and pills you'll be swallowing every single day for the rest of your life. Not by choice, but by coercion. Because without them, you won't be authenticated. Comply or be cut off. Stay tuned, because next, I'll lay out the receipts, the patents, the policies, the proof that this nightmare isn't coming someday, it's already here. Today's sponsor is pillsforever.com. If you think Big Pharma have your best interests at heart, speaking of fenbendazole, not only does it get rid of parasites,
3 of them don't have cancer right now at all. And they had some serious stuff going on.
please click the link below this video to take advantage of this.
Oops. Sorry, guys. Take it back a little bit. Gotta remember, I am kind of the producer.
Fantastic offer. Here's where it gets truly sinister. Let's talk about a little known filing. US Patent 060606. Yes, 666. The number of the beast. The patent describes a so-called cryptocurrency system using body activity data. And guess whose name is all over it? Bill Gates. This patent describes a future where your very movements, your biological signals, and even your brainwaves are mined and monetized. In other words, your body becomes the battery. Now, link that to electronic tattoos and ingestible tech already sliding through the FDA, and you start to see the picture. The mark of the beast isn't science fiction, it's being patented, codified, and quietly prepared for rollout. And what happens when you decide to rebel against the system, to say no to the digital brand, to reject the beast system? Member of the European Parliament, Christine Anderson, has seen the plans.
I'm pretty sure with a flip of a switch, they can just turn it off and you cease to exist. When your entire existence is based upon you having to authenticate yourself with some kind of a chip, and that chip gets turned off, then you no longer exist. And then what we actually would have is dead men walking in reality. You would be literally a dead man, yet you are not really dead, but you would be for everyone else. You wouldn't be able to buy anything. You wouldn't be able to open the front door of your own house You wouldn't be able to do anything anymore. You're literally a dead man walking. Well, yeah, why don't we try that? Seriously? No, this is the ultimate tool to control every single human being. And you don't even have to be close to that human being, near that human being. You just, flip of a switch and boom, he's gone.
Anderson has sounded the alarm. If Gates is allowed to unleash this technology, and if the public blindly complies, then humanity will be dragged into a darkness from which they may never return. The nightmare of communist East Germany, the iron grip of the Soviet Union, these will look like child's play compared to what the globalists have planned. Once they seize total control, every movement, every thought, every breath will be monitored and managed. This isn't just surveillance, it's the end of human freedom as we know it.
That's exactly how they're getting these people to actually go ahead and do it. Oh, if it's cool, if it'll piss off my parents, yeah, let's have it. They make it sound fun. They make it sound joyful. It's not. This is actually, dehumanizing. It's the worst kind of totalitarianism you can actually imagine, given the technological means they have at their disposal already. Once we do slip in, and go fully totalitarian. I mean, we're no longer talking about just 40 years of Eastern Germany. We're not talking about 70 years Soviet Union. We will be talking about a very, very long time if we will be have a chance to ever get out of it ever again. That remains to be seen. So we need to fight this now, and we need to expose it now, because it has nothing to do with living as a human being. You would actually be, degraded to just like a functioning part in some kind of a malleable mass that the globalitarian misanthropists get to shuffle around any which way they desire.
The upcoming rollout is no longer a question of if, only when. The elites are already preparing a massive psychological operation to convince the masses it's time to ditch their so-called conveniences like smartphones and embrace the beast system, technology embedded under the skin. Those of you who resisted during the COVID era, who refused to cave to the globalist lies, survived the greatest mass deception psyop in history. You deserve an enormous amount of credit. As the late Nobel Prize winner Luc Montagnier warned, it may be people like you who ultimately saved humanity itself. But we can't rest on our laurels now, because a new assault is coming, and this one will be even harder to spot. So how do we prepare? How do we recognize the trap before it closes around us? To help answer that, here's Chase Hughes, our former US military behavior expert, with his tips on how to spot a psyop before it ensnares you.
The intelligent minorities can engineer consent through the use of manipulation, propaganda, and control, and we should do it.
People have got to know whether or not their president's a crook. Well, I'm not a crook.
We are in the midst of a serious financial crisis, and the federal government is responding with decisive action.
I know that the American people share my deep belief that if a danger exists in the world, it is a danger shared by all.
We need to actually double down on the public health measures.
You can't look at that television and say, nothing happened on the 6th.
We'd like for you to answer the question.
Okay, it's very simple to answer.
That's why I asked it.
It's very simple to you're a nasty person, I'll tell you.
Most people have no awareness of how easily our behavior and even our identity can be completely taken over. But people are waking up. I spent 20 years in the US military. I'm a behavior expert. I've trained PsyOps. I'm the best-selling author in behavioral psychology. I want to show you exactly how to identify what we call engineered reality, or what some people call PsyOps. So the first thing you need to know is following the FATE model: focus, authority, tribe, and emotion. This is what triggers the mammalian part of our brain that makes all of our real decisions. The first part is focus. PsyOps always aim to hijack your attention with repetition, shocking visuals of fear-inducing scenarios. Some examples are like 24/7 media coverage of a crisis, or constant repetition of terms like unprecedented. So with this, pause and ask, why is this message being pushed so aggressively? So compare how much airtime different stories are receiving and note any disproportionate focus. The second part here is authority. Trusted figures might shift their tone or positions unnaturally to support the narrative. So watch very closely for expert panelists or endorsements where authority figures might speak outside of their expertise. Pay close attention to that one. Then we have tribe. So messages that polarize opinions or create stark in-groups versus out-groups or exploit our tribal instincts. For example, labeling groups as patriots versus traitors or scientific versus deniers. Be very careful when you hear that language. Finally, we have emotion. So be wary of any communication that triggers strong emotions like fear, hope, or outrage without any clear, verifiable evidence. So emotional responses suppress critical thinking. Emotional responses suppress critical thinking. So as a tip here, analyze the evidence that's presented to you. If facts are replaced by appeals to emotion, you need to be very cautious. As an example of this, think about like a news channel repeatedly showing images of empty grocery shelves and panicked shoppers during a food supply scare. It dominates every broadcast and it pushes people into fear-driven behavior.
So here's where we stand. The beast system is no longer a theory. It's on the verge of being rolled out. Electronic tattoos, ingestible devices, digital IDs tied to every aspect of your life. Total control hidden behind a mask of convenience. But remember this, they only succeed if we comply. They only win if we stay silent. Every time you say no, every time you refuse to bow to their digital chains, you keep the flame of freedom alive. At TBV, we've stood shoulder to shoulder with you in exposing the lies, and together we'll face the storm that's coming. Stay awake, stay strong, and never stop fighting for your sovereignty. Because the line in the sand has been drawn. The question is, will you step across it, or will you stand your ground? Here at The People's Voice, we're determined to continue exposing the crimes of the elite, but we need your help. Subscribe to the channel, tell your friends and family.
So definitely check out The People's Voice. Again, I said he's on X under Sean TVP. So I'll make sure to post his X profile with the link, so you definitely can check out more videos that he's going to bring about. And I want to give some shout outs. Thank you, Black and Power, for reposting the stream. Patty Cakes, thank you for reposting the stream. Unc, thank you for reposting the stream. Carlos, thank you for reposting the stream. And Cajun Lady, thank you for reposting the stream. And thank you all for joining me here this morning on Unfiltered Vision News. And I just wanted to show you the Bill Gates patent, or the tattoo patent, sorry. So Bill Gates has not personally filed a patent for a tattoo, but the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation funded research at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT, that developed a microneedle patch capable of delivering a vaccine alongside an invisible quantum dye, which forms a tattoo under the skin to record vaccination history. Now, this is a little bit separate from what the lady had showed, but I also wanted to show that there is another form of vaccine that they're going to put out there, and they're probably going to do it in a matter of convenience, right? Hey, all of your vaccine history will be here. You just have to put your wrist, under the scanner, and we can scan you, and you're good, right? Because everybody's rejecting the vaccine. People are rejecting the vaccine cards. Like, you have to show that you're vaccinated. People are rejecting that, right? They're still going to push for it. They really are. It says this technology was patented by MIT under number W02019018301A1, uses biodegradable microneedles to implant nanocrystal quantum dots that are visible to the naked eye, but can be read with a specialized smartphone app using near infrared light. The goal is to improve vaccination tracking, especially in regions where medical records are properly maintained. So here is definitely what the gentleman was talking about with the fate theory, right? They've got to use fear. Oh, they're poorly maintained, and it gives you an emotional response. It's like, wow, I'm definitely going to clip that video and just kind of keep it on repeat for people to really understand this is how our media is being portrayed to us. Because I don't know if for you guys, but just watching that, I was like, yeah, definitely true. And I do personally for myself try not to make long-term decisions in an emotional state. And if something makes me emotional, I have to step back from it and say, okay, why am I emotional? What's triggering me, right? Am I sad? Am I angry? Like, what is going on with how I'm accepting and receiving this information? That's just something that I do as a check for myself. And I think that's a lot of what we need to start practicing, as opposed to just jumping on something and getting so emotional about it. We need to see it and go, okay, why am I emotional about this? What is triggering this? Why should I feel this way or that way? So I'm going to get into our next video. I think you guys are going to kind of like this. It's definitely relevant to the topic today. And it shows how a couple of years ago, people in DC were actually crying out for help with the police, presence and crime and things of that nature. But now that Trump has stepped in, is it different? So let's see.
DC called for the National Guard because crime was so bad.
DC's leaders struggled to get the crisis under control. One Democratic councilman is now calling for military intervention.
We just know that police alone is not getting it done. We're simply asking our federal partners for help and presence in our community because we know that officers who have a handgun.
Okay, now I need you to see this big 2023 here. Okay, we're now in 2025. In 2023, they were asking, he said, for our federal partners. So they were making a plea to Congress and the president to step in, and nothing happened.
Can't combat 3 people with AR-15s and AK-47s shooting down the street.
So Trump answered those calls and took over DC and sent in the National Guard.
This is Liberation Day in DC, and we're going to take our capital back. We're taking it back.
So if you've watched this channel, you've heard about the horror show, which is Washington, D.C. And we've talked about it many times on this channel. Now, for those of you who don't watch most of my videos, let me give you a quick recap. For example, you don't need citizenship in Washington, D.C. to vote. They allow non-citizens to vote in elections.
We're just 2 days out from D.C.'s primary. A new group of voters are casting their first ever ballot. Last year, a new law allowed non-citizens to vote, and it's causing controversy nationally.
The city council unanimously passed the legislation in 2022.
The consent agenda is approved unanimously.
Now, D.C. goes even farther. For instance, if you're a non-citizen, you can actually be mayor of D.C. or even be on the city council. Yes. Non-citizens can hold public office in D.C.
The mayor of the District of Columbia could be a non-citizen.
Technically, it sounds like you're about right.
Committee Chair Anita Bonds went on to explain the rationale.
If you reside in the District of Columbia, that you have the rights of everyone else because you're paying taxes. And your children are in our school system.
DC's run by Democrats, and Democrats were all in for BLM. So they decided to essentially defund their police department in a very unique way. Just don't hire any new police officers.
We're back now with a tough admission from D.C.'s police chief. He told us the city's police department hasn't been this small in nearly 50 years, and it comes at a time when even the mayor admits fear of violent crime is high.
The department has had fewer than 3,400 members since December. 430 fewer officers now than we did in 2019, and likely the lowest number of officers since at least the 1970s. It will take more than a decade to reach 3,800 sworn officers if we are able to sustain even modest net gains in staffing each year.
Think about that. Fewer officers than in the 1970s.
But DC wasn't finished. They said, well, we're cutting the police department, but we're also going to change the laws to make it easier for criminals to get out of jail. Their change was so bad that even the left-wing lunatic Biden administration rejected their changes to the law because Biden, again, listen to this Biden administration, thought it was too light on crime.
Talk to the team, and we have a couple of things that I just want to lay out for all of you and on what the DC bill does. It reduces maximum penalties for offenses like murders and other homicides, armed home invasion burglaries, armed carjackings, as I mentioned, armed robberies, unlawful gun possession, and some sexual assault offenses.
So DC has a double whammy. You defund the police department and then you pass laws to make it easier on the criminals. So what do you think happened? Crime exploded.
Political headlines, of course, are dominating the message from the nation's capital. The city's leaders are now sounding the alarm over a much different crisis on the streets. Violent crime jumped 37% from last year, according to the D.C. Metropolitan Police Department. Homicide is up 28%, with robbery up an alarming, get this, 60%. Now, a city council member is calling for the National Guard to help restore order.
Democrats in Washington, D.C. were begging President at the time, Joe Biden, to send the National Guard into D.C. to help with the crime because crime was so bad. I have that clip.
But as DC's leaders struggle to get the crisis under control, one Democratic councilman is now calling for military intervention.
There's a spirit of anarchy and lawlessness rampant through our communities. I've never seen this onslaught of violence portrayed on our women and our kids. And enough is enough.
Enough is enough.
We are clearly in a war zone. So I have spoken with the DC National Guard. And while I have to have more conversations with the chief of police, which I have today, and the mayor and my colleagues, we have a long way to get there. We just know that police alone is not getting it done. We're simply asking our federal partners for help and presence in our community because we know that officers who have a handgun can't combat three people with AR-15s and AK-47s shooting down the street.
Now, you'd think that would be bad enough, but it doesn't stop here. See, crime became so out of control in D.C. that stores had to close because police weren't arresting people doing things like shoplifting.
A D.C. council member is sounding the alarm tonight over the wide-reaching impact of crime. Ward 8 council member Trayon White today said if rampant shoplifting continues, the Giant on Alabama Avenue in Southeast may be forced to close its doors. News 4's Mauricio Casillas looks into what this would mean for food insecurity in the district and what's being done to keep that store open.
We're gonna work with John to keep this open.
A call to action to save an oasis of sorts in what is otherwise a food desert in Southeast D.C.
Taken from this store is really taken from yourself.
Councilmember Trayon White says he's met with management and Giant who tell him they lost hundreds of thousands of dollars due to shoplifting in this store alone.
We know it's tough times, and we know the price of food has skyrocketed in the last 3 years.
That's right, yeah.
But we cannot afford to hurt ourselves by constantly taking from the store, because that means that everybody is going to be without a place to eat.
Now that's interesting. You know, he's talking about the price of groceries increasing. Now, people are still upset because groceries have not decreased right now. Okay. We what, 7 months in to the Trump administration are like, get my groceries down. But I wanted to send a shout out to People Activity. He says Grand Rising founder, and thank you for that. That's Brother Muko over on YouTube. I appreciate you. And Cajun Lady says something really profound. She says defund the police in 2022, then in 2023. So they did it back to back. Now, this was obviously after Biden had been in office because he was in office in 2021. So in 2022, 2023, they defunded the police. And they were asking for National Guard. Make it make sense. Exactly. It's like you defund like you said, you defunded the police, then you wrote policies or slacked policies to let people out of prison, which the Biden administration was like, not smart, right? But they were still very soft on crime. And this young man, he's like, we gotta, don't steal from the stores. We can do better. And yeah, it's one of those things they created a problem, and they wanted people begging for a solution that would be worse than the problem that it already was trying to fix, right? Having the National Guard be a security presence so your police can just police, that's helpful. And that's all that they were asking for. But do we need National Guard everywhere? Or do we need better community policing? Do we need better laws to ensure that people that are, basically engaging in criminal behavior be sent to jail? There's some actual consequences. Shocker, right?
And enough is enough.
So Democrats who lived in D.C. were begging for help. They were begging for the National Guard. They were begging for assistance. Crime was out of control. You see, even their elected representatives are begging for help. So now I know what you're going to say. You're going to say, Nate, crime in Washington, D.C. has decreased by 29% in the last year. It was 30% last year. Crime is going down in D.C. Everybody's saying it.
It's also worth noting that violent crime in Washington is actually falling dramatically. After a spike immediately following the pandemic, the violent crime rate in D.C. has been steadily going down ever since. Even one violent crime is too many, of course, but the rate is now at a 30-year low.
Now, if you believe that, I don't blame you. CNN is saying that. And even the left-wing lawyers here on YouTube are saying that too.
They should know violent offenses in D.C. are down 29% compared to the numbers of 2024. And generally speaking, these numbers are part of historically low crime statistics as well.
As all of this is going on, violent crime in D.C. is down 26% from last year. Shouldn't Trump actually just be taking credit for that? He might finally, even though it has nothing to do with Trump and, it really has nothing to do with Trump, Biden, or the presidents, he could take credit for that, as many presidents would try to do. Carjackings down 37%. But in Trump world, the facts don't really matter. It's just about perception. And if the perception helps Donald Trump to justify another power grab, another soft launch of martial law, he's good.
So that should settle it, right? Crime is down in D.C. What is Trump doing? But obviously, I'm showing you those clips of these people saying these things because they're being deceptive and they're actively lying to you. Why? Because they've failed to tell you that those crime stats aren't accurate. Matter of fact, they're doctored. The stats are so bad that a police commander in D.C. was suspended for doctoring the crime stats that they're talking about, making it seem like crime was going down when it wasn't the case.
A D.C. police commander is under investigation for allegedly making changes to crime statistics in his district. Tonight, the police department confirms Michael Pulliam was placed on paid administrative leave in mid-May.
The D.C. Police Union is putting its allegations on the record tonight, claiming police supervisors in the department are manipulating crime data to make it appear violent crime has fallen considerably when compared to last year. As of today, according to the D.C. Police website, crime is down 25%, a decrease the chairman of the police union calls preposterous. The union's allegations come as the former commander of the 3rd District stands accused of doing what the union says is being done day in and day out.
When management officials are directing officers to take reports for felony assault, or if they're going back into police databases and changing offenses to felony assault is not a category of crime that's listed on the department's daily crime stats. It's also not something that's a requirement of the FBI's Uniform Crime Reporting Program. So by changing criminal offenses from, for example, ADW bat or ADW gun to felony assault, that would avoid both the MPD and the FBI from reporting that as a Part 1 or a felony offense.
So as you can see, CNN, Legal Eagle, and David Pakman didn't mention the fact that the numbers, the crime data that they're citing as saying crime is lower in D.C. are probably doctored, and someone's actually been punished for doctoring them. But you wouldn't know that if you just watched those shows. Now, one thing you're going to hear about is the fact that Trump is doing this to D.C. He wants to do this to other cities like New York and Chicago, and he can't do anything like that. Matter of fact, here's my boy D. Miller from D Law, and he's going to explain to you the law.
Let's jump right into it. So,
I'm going to take a quick break and just interject for Brother Muko. He says, really dismantling the race soldiers and create compensatory justice officers. Yeah, like I was talking about, just community policing would work much better. He says that guarantees no one is harmed and always no fail, guaranteeing the most constructive help in every situation they are called for. Exactly. Because you might have a situation where we heard about someone unfortunately losing their life in Texas, where the mother even said, we usually have a crisis officer come out to deal with a mental crisis, right? But they had sent regular police officers that were not versed in actually handling the situation. So that makes a lot of sense, Brother Muko. And Unc says, this is why I don't trust no stats or statistics or statistics, sorry, that come from any of these platforms who report on any of this information. They all work for the they all work for the Democrat devils. I'm just gonna say Democrats because it worked out to be documents, but I know what you're saying. And Brother Muko says all the stats are doctored, especially in Baltimore, D.C., and Virginia, missing children and charging Black boys as adults. So how is crime down? Maryland is number 2 in the United States. Yeah. Yeah. And the city of Baltimore, I think, is listed as the 5th highest crime city in the country. Crazy, right? Because to hear Wes Moore say it, they're banging it out and doing well. I'm like, bro, there's so much more that needs to be done. So much more. And Cajun Lady says, we need to get back to loving one another. That would be a good thing. We lost that decades ago. Yeah. I remember the community watching out for one another. Yeah. And it used to be a time where, like the older relatives would say, like maybe grandmas or uncles, that were retired. They lived in the neighborhood. They make sure the kids were okay. Sometimes there might be that one house on the block where there wasn't a lot of food and there was a single mom, and they kind of brought that child in and they would invite them over for dinner, and everyone really looked out for one another. So when something did go down and happen, they were more, as a community, communicating with the police officer. So if the police came in and said, hey, what's going on? There was a conversation. And the police didn't just come in and say, okay, we're just going to lord it over everybody down on the ground. It was like, whoa, I know these people. And that's another part of the equation that we have totally just missed. But let's get back to the video. It's actually really interesting.
What gives President Trump the power to come in and take over D.C.? President Trump is calling it Liberation Day 2.0. We've seen it before with the tariffs. Let's see what the Constitution has to say about this. To understand how this is even possible, you have to understand what makes D.C. unique. Washington, D.C. is not a state, it's not a county, it's not even a regular city. It's a federal district created by the United States Constitution itself. U.S. Constitution, Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17. This gives Congress the power to exercise exclusive legislation in all cases whatsoever over such district as may become the seat of government of the United States. So that exclusive legislation means that Congress can do whatever it wants, however it wants, the way it wants to in D.C. For most of its history, D.C.'s been run directly by Congress. In 1973, Congress passed the District of Columbia Home Rule Act, letting D.C. elect its own mayor and city council. So Congress has allowed the district to elect anyone they want to for this particular position. They've even elected someone who was caught on tape smoking crack, and they elected him twice. Marion Barry was his name. Unbelievable. Here's the catch. Congress still kept ultimate authority. Under Section 740 of the Home Rule Act, the president can assume direct command of the Metropolitan Police Department. That's the section Trump cited when he announced the takeover.
Going to take our capital back. We're taking it back. Under the authorities vested in me as the President of the United States, I'm officially invoking Section 740 of the District of Columbia Home Rule Act. You know what that is? And placing the D.C. Metropolitan Police Department under direct federal control. And you'll be meeting the people that will be directly involved with that.
By invoking Section 740, he removed the mayor's control over the police department and installed his own federal commissioner. So this obviously leads to the question, can this happen anywhere? Chicago, New York, in your city? Well, the answer is no. Unlike New York, Chicago, or LA, DC's local autonomy exists only because Congress allows it to. If Congress or the president decide to step in, local authorities have no veto. It's the same reason Congress can block DC from spending its own tax revenue on certain programs, and why a president can deploy federal agencies or even the National Guard here without any state approval. But the Constitution does not give them authority to take over any city in the United States. That's what makes DC unique.
Okay, so now you know it's 100% legal and you understand that crime is a problem in DC, and the media is trying to lie to you to make it seem like there is no crime problem in DC. So is there a crime problem in DC? Obviously there is. Matter of fact, people in the media started feeling some way about the lies about DC being this utopia and started giving their own experiences. These are left-wing media personalities giving their own experiences about being robbed and about their friends being robbed in DC. Check it out.
I can tell you firsthand here in downtown DC where we work, right here around our bureau, just in the past 6 months, there were 2 people shot. One person died, literally 2 blocks down here from the bureau. It was within the last 2 years that I actually was jumped walking just 2 blocks down from here. And then just this morning, one of my coworkers said her car was stolen. It's happened to a lot of people in our building, sadly. He was homeless and half dressed, clearly wasn't in his clear mind. It was scary as hell, I'm not going to lie, but I fought back. I didn't see any weapons in his hands. I felt like it was my only choice. The president did mention that this effort is also going to help clean up homelessness. As we know, many members of the homeless community, sadly, take it upon themselves, like what happened to me, to carry out violence.
I don't care what the crime statistics say. Crime has been a problem in this city for the 32 years I've been living inside and outside of the city. It's just, even now, Meek and I, we're talking to somebody who lives in the city. These are all Democrats who said, our friends won't walk more than 3 blocks in D.C. at night without filtering. Complete opposite of New York City.
So now, this is something that it's obvious, right? DC is a hellhole. It is a hellscape. Now, all of a sudden, the Democrats don't want to call it a hellscape, even though they were the ones begging for the National Guard. They were the ones begging for help. They were the ones saying that we need people to help us stop crime, right? These were the Democrats in DC. And Trump essentially gave them what they were asking for. So now, at the end of the day, I think what Trump is doing is correct. I think he saw a problem and he jumped on it immediately. Why do people continue to need to be harmed and robbed and allow these lunatics in DC to just do whatever they want, even though it's hurting the people there in DC? And those are black people, people of color, low income people. Those are the people being hurt by the Democrats' own policies in DC. As always, tell me where I'm wrong in the comments section. And if you're listening to me right now at this part of
Okay. And that is Nate, the lawyer. And he is on YouTube. I'll definitely make sure when I repost his video link, I'll make sure you guys know where to follow him. And Brother Muko says, yeah, DC isn't a city. And he definitely agreed with the video. And he says, not in any state or city, this isn't a mistake, people. And that is interesting. Well, I'm kind of glad that the president can't just, take over any city or state, right? But it does, in my opinion, say a lot for what's not happening in cities the way it should be. And Brother Muko threw up some more thumbs ups. I'm assuming that's from the video. But then he also said, white people kill for fun, not defense. And that is interesting because you never really see the perspective of crime with certain racial groups, I should say that, in the way they want to make it look, right? It is different. I was watching a video in the city, and if you know what the city is, And it was an old Donahue program. And I was like, wow, that is very interesting. Just how, people were talking about race. And this was in the 90s. So I was like, okay, I was roughly in my 20s, during the 90s. And I really never looked at it this way, but race has really just been used as a caste system in the United States, because you can go in, and in my opinion, around the world, because if you go to any countries around the world, they will treat lighter skinned people with more, that like they have superiority, and they treat darker skinned people worse or make it more difficult for them to maneuver in society. And I was like, wow, because, people were, making their different opinions about race and different things like that. And I was like, yeah, I don't think people are really racist in that respect. It seems it's more prejudice, right? And discriminatory. Because you can discriminate against people, right? And you can be prejudicial, thinking, well, you look this way, then therefore therefore you might act this way, right? You're prejudging the situation just based on optics. And so I just thought, I was like, yeah, it's a caste system. And Cajun says race has been used to keep us divided. Absolutely. Like I said, it's a caste system. It's united we stand, divided we fall. Absolutely. I mean, at a certain juncture, we need to, and I'm not trying to be harsh, we need to make sure that we're being respectful to one another. Because I'm not going to say get over it. We need to be respectful for one another, because see, I can't change my skin color, nor would I want to. I love who I am. And I shouldn't look in the mirror and say, oh, I feel so bad about who I am because other people don't like me. I don't care if you don't like me. But see, I'm a grown up. Right. I've gotten to that point in my life where I'm like, whatever, I'm like 53, I'll be 54 this year. And I don't know, there's just a switch that clicks after you turn 45, which is like, I wish somebody would come in my face and say anything to me. Not today. Right. I'm not rude about it, but I'm just like, I'm not given to. Okay. I know who I am. I love myself. I love my country. Mess with me. You know what I mean? Like, maybe I'm just wired differently, but that's just how I get down. That's just me. But not everybody's wired that way. And so they're in their feelings and emotions. And it goes back to that first video we just talked about, which is the fate model. Oh, can you say, lady says she'll be 53 this year. I was like, yeah, we're tracking. So you've been able to see the change. When we didn't have cell phones, we lived, we survived. We knew we needed to come in when the street lights came on, right? We knew when it was dark. We knew what we were doing as kids. A lot of us were latchkey kids, right? A lot of us had single parents, and we had to, go in and cook dinner. Some of us had siblings that we had to take care of. Some of us didn't. But we made it, and we're here. We're respectful in society. And you would think with more technology that our children would be on a better path, that they would be smarter and wiser and more diplomatic. And it is a trash dumpster fire outside. I'm like, what happened to parenting? Well, babies started having babies, right? Grandma started raising these babies, and these babies got real spoiled, because when you're raised by grandma and not your mom and dad, where there's structure, life is different. So we're going to keep going on to the next video. Now, this video kind of transitions. It's still along the lines of, in my opinion, talking about discrimination, right? And how we move forward, but it definitely touches on something that we all need to understand.
They do, because I used to ask them to do it. I mean, when I was in the Mossad, and we had a guy that gave us problems in the U.S., and he was speaking out, and he was talking like people know what they do, because I used to ask them to do it. I mean, when I was in the Mossad, and we had a guy that gave us problems in the U.S., and he was speaking out, and he was talking like Pete talked once and said, Israel is bombing Lebanon with cluster bombs. We say, hey, who's that guy? Pete Makaki, we used to call him, which is Pete the cockroach. Because he makes a lot of noise and you can't get rid of him. So what you do is you get in touch with a guy in the station in New York or in the station in Washington. You say, tell the guys at B'nai B'rith to label him. And of course the campaign starts, and before you know it, the guy's labeled. And he's an anti-Semite, because that's what we say he is. And that's one stain you cannot wash. Now, it shames me as a Jew to tell you that, but that's the fact, and it's wrong.
Okay. So I wanted to bring that up because, you know, we're here and we're talking about race, right? But he just said, he's like, we can basically just put a mark on you, a stain that you can't even get rid of because we want to, because we can't. You know, when they're turning around, they're saying, these people are anti-Semites and they're this, that, and the other. Interesting. Because they did the same thing with racism. They were saying people were racist because they didn't want to support homosexuality. One has nothing to do with the other. Again, like I said, there's prejudice and there's discrimination. Because you have to be involved in an act of racism to be a racist. Racism is a verb. It is actually an action that you have to be involved in. And actually, the action is putting one race over another. It is in action that you do that. So, for example, if I were to say, okay, all Black people are over everybody on the planet, and everybody else on the planet means nothing. But then that's me saying it, but then I would have to act on it and actually do something and carry that action out. Right? Because there's the racism, but then I would have to be involved in a racist act to be labeled a racist. It is an action. It is a verb. So when people run around calling other people racist, I'm like, be careful with what you're doing because you're getting away from the actual definition and meaning of the word. It is a verb. But can people be discriminatory? Absolutely. Can they be prejudiced? Yes. Like I said, race in our country is used as a caste system. And it's a visual caste system, where in other places like maybe India, it's a caste system by name and by family order, right? There are people, they have a certain last name and they are at the bottom class. And certain people have another last name and they're in the upper class, right? But here in our country, we have a visual caste system. And Cajun Lady says, the fact that one doesn't accept someone's delusion doesn't make them racist. It makes them someone with the ability to critically think. Yeah. Yeah. And we have to think critically about all information being brought to us because it's up to us on how we act on the information, right? You can act good or crazy or however. But once you take in the information and process it, how do you react? Do you live on an emotional tangent? Because that's what the media expects you to do. They want people in a frenzy. I think this is the first summer, and I don't know if anybody else has noticed it since about maybe 2020, 2021, where we haven't had what I call a quote, a summer of love, where there's complete devastation in certain cities because there's all this rude, loitering and robbery going on. Now, what came close to it is what happened in Los Angeles, right? Where they're going after the ICE agents in the ICE facility, and everybody's so upset about illegal people being removed from our country. Okay. So it lasted for a couple weeks, and it does still go. They do have small demonstrations at certain ICE facilities like they do in Portland, but nobody's buying it on a mass scale. They had to cut it back because people actually woke up and said, "Wait a minute, you want us to protect people that are in our country illegally?" And it flipped the switch, and people they were like, "Yeah, they shouldn't be here in our country. Get them out of here." And it's almost like people are tuning out the regular news programs because all they're doing is inciting emotion and stoking fear. That's it. That's it. It's crazy. All right, so we're going to get to our next video. This one I wanted to play for you guys because I wanted you to see that it's all coming out, how a lot of these government officials of states, so governors especially, were supporting illegal activity. Interesting. I find it fascinating that they don't think that they can be found guilty or in violation of Title 8, Section 1324. I find it fascinating. Let's see, add to the
Massachusetts GOP is criticizing Governor Maura Healey over a new report that shows shifting shelter costs to the state's home-based program. The program provides rental assistance to migrant families. According to the report, Massachusetts is on pace to spend $97 million on the home-based program in the current fiscal year. The state spent approximately $9.5 million on housing at-risk families. Massachusetts Republican Party Chair Amy Carnevale released a statement following the release of the report, saying in part, quote, "As much as Maura Healey would like the public to think that she's improving the system, the data tells a different story."
So interesting, right? Home-based program, $97 million. But none of that money went to American citizens. It was all spent on people that were here illegally. Yeah. But they will turn around and tell American citizens, well, so we can't help you. We don't have anything for you. But you want to prop up people to be there so they vote for you. Because again, you're trying to replace people. Replacement migration is real. We've talked about it on the show. Swamy, thank you so much for reposting the stream. Yeah. So it is up to us, you know. And I definitely appreciate all you guys coming in and, giving your thoughts and opinions, because you remind me just with your feedback that it is still up to us to get this done. Because I'm as much as I want our government to be better and in place, look, it's up to us to put good people in office. It is up to us to get these criminals out of our government at the local, state, and federal levels. It is up to us. We do not get to sit back and say it's somebody else's job. It's our job, and we will get it done. And now we're going to go more into the medical realm. The medical part. Yeah. Cajun Lady says we hold all the power when it comes to our government. We do. And we need to remember that with every breath that we take. So I'm gonna get into this video. I'm gonna preface it with a disclaimer. It is very I don't want to say it's shocking, but it's gruesome. I will say that. So I will preface it and disclaim it with that.
Were arrests on a massive scale. Amongst those taken into custody by the FBI were city mayors, politicians and religious leaders. The authorities needed buses to cope with the sheer scale of the operation.
New Jersey's corruption problem is one of the worst, if not the worst, in the nation. Corruption is not only pervasive, it has become ingrained in New Jersey's political culture.
It's thought that religious charities controlled by prominent rabbis were used to launder cash. The arrests were part of a 10-year operation that uncovered money laundering on an international scale, as well as corruption and the sale of human organs in the US, Switzerland and Israel.
The list of people we arrested sounds like it should be the roster for a meeting of community leaders. But sadly, they weren't meeting in a boardroom this morning. They were in the FBI booking room.
Prosecutors say one rabbi was dealing in human kidneys for transplant for a decade, buying them from vulnerable people at a huge profit. The scale of the corruption across New Jersey has outraged residents.
It just goes back to the belief that Hudson County is incredibly corrupt. And I thought we were making headway and becoming less corrupt.
The number of arrests was remarkable even for New Jersey, where more than 130 public officials have pleaded guilty or been convicted of corruption in the last 10 years.
Wow. Okay. So, they have talked about, people's having their organs harvested and people making money on the black market, right, for doing a lot of this. And when I see things like missing children and exploited children and young adults, that's where my mind goes. I'm like, okay, not only are these people possibly being sex trafficked, right? Their organs are being harvested and sold. And that's not just that. The hospitals are doing the same thing. And see, they started doing it in the hospitals and getting away with it by intubating people, right? Or giving people medications when they're in a hospital and they're perfectly well. You know, we also have a young man that I mentioned a little bit earlier with the mental breakdown, where they sent out a regular police as opposed to, you know, a crisis officer. And that young man, unfortunately, died in prison 3 days after he was there, and his organs were harvested. So this is becoming a business everywhere, not just New Jersey, because see, that situation happened in Texas. They did not tell his mother that he was dead until he was dead, and then they were like, "Yeah, he's dead and his organs are harvested." What? You gotta get permission for that, but guess what? They don't. Check your driver's licenses and make sure that you are not on the donor registry, because when they find out you are, they will find a way to get your organs. Like, this is becoming an interesting civilization. We'll just say that people are trying to make money any way that they can, even at the expense of others. So we just really need to hold on to our humanity. And Righteous Anger, thank you so much for joining us this morning and reposting the stream. And with that, I'm going to take a quick break, because yeah, we've been going in, guys. We've been getting into it. And I want to talk a little bit about gold backs. So let's check this out.
This is a 1/10 ounce gold coin, and this is 1/10 of an ounce of gold in the form of gold-back notes. Now, clearly, there are some pretty significant differences between these two forms of bullion, but I like to stack both. The coin I view as a long-term store of value, right along with things like gold bars. But if you want a form of gold that is highly divisible and suitable for a means of exchange for day-to-day items, the goldbacks really do a good job of breaking gold down into a highly divisible form. Plus, they look really cool.
And we are back. Thank you so much for joining us here on Unfiltered Vision News, bringing you the news unfiltered Monday through Friday, 7 to 9 a.m. Eastern. And my name is Dr. Ashaki Noni Nichols. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. And Mark from the Soil, thank you for reposting the stream. So I wanted to talk to you guys briefly just about Alpine Gold Exchange, and they do sell the gold backs, as you can see here on the screen. I'm not going to spend too much time on it, but I wanted to just show you guys and share with you guys that gold backs, yes, it is a form of monetary exchange that can be used. So we just don't need to use regular paper dollars, right? These gold backs actually carry the amount that gold is worth, or that gold is trading at these days. And I think gold is trading at like $6 an ounce or something ridiculous, because it's like over $3,000. Yeah, here you go. Like, gold is like trading at $3,300. It was actually up to $3,500 last week. So it's real gold that is in an exchangeable form. And the other thing I wanted to say, because see here it says Oklahoma on these gold backs. So a lot of these gold backs, they're within different states. This one is particularly Oklahoma, but there are a list of states that do accept it. So they're in Arizona, Idaho, South Dakota, Colorado, Missouri, Indiana, Utah, Florida, Wyoming, Arkansas, New Hampshire, They're trying so much. They're also in Canada, right? And so I wanted to share that with you guys because we need to make sure that we are taking care of our financial house, right? So if everything, blows up, goes away, we do still have a system in place for society because it's going to get wild because, people without money do desperate things. And we need to make sure that we're not acting out in desperation, making sure that we're looking out for our neighbors because they are going to need some help from us. They just are. I know some people don't like to say it like that, but hey, look out for the people that live next to you. So with that, we're going to get into our next video. And April Showers, thank you so much for joining us this morning and reposting the stream. So this next video is about Planned Parenthood and I guess what's going to happen with them next. Let's see.
Planned Parenthood facilities are closing their doors. This comes after Congress passed a federal bill this month which prevents any facility offering abortion services from seeing Medicaid patients. Local 12's Katie Amrine live in Mount Auburn with the details. Katie?
When both the Planned Parenthood locations in Hamilton and Springfield close, this location in Mount Auburn will be only one of 4 serving patients in the Southwest Ohio region. This is leaving patients and staff looking for a place to land.
Patients of Planned Parenthood in Hamilton and Springfield will be forced to look elsewhere for care, as the facilities will soon shut down for good. This comes after Congress passed a federal bill this month, which prevents any facility offering abortion services from seeing Medicaid patients. Possible cuts to the number of Ohioans eligible for Medicaid also factored into this decision.
Medicaid was helping preventative care for sexual reproductive health. It was helping people to get birth control. Now that people won't be able to access this care, we'll see an increase in sexually transmitted instances. We will see an increase in unintended pregnancies.
President and CEO.
Okay. So this is the face, and I'm not making the face of the whole Planned Parenthood, but this is one of the faces of Planned Parenthood. It's like reproductive services. What does that even mean? Oh, birth control. Oh, abortions. She said it. She didn't say anything else. They didn't talk about, oh, these are for, women's well checks to make sure that they are well, right? That they're not suffering from cervical cancer, or that we're making sure that they're getting their annual pap smears. She didn't say any of that. Her focus and concern is basically on making sure that populations aren't growing in the areas where these particular facilities are located. They're not located everywhere. They're not in Beverly Hills. I'm just going to tell you that. They're on Wilshire, going down towards downtown Los Angeles, because I used to live in California. But that's where the Planned Parenthood is. Planned Parenthood's not in well-to-do areas. It's not where they put them. They put them predominantly in places where people are ethnic. We'll just say that.
CEO of the organization's Southwest Ohio branch, Nan Whaley, says with the Hamilton and Springfield clinics no longer able to treat Medicaid patients, they won't have enough patients to operate. Hamilton and Springfield are just 2 of nearly 200 clinics facing closure nationwide.
The abortion clinics in Dayton and Cincinnati will still be open, will still remain. We expect abortions actually to increase with this loss of Medicaid because there will be less preventative care.
As for staff members, Whaley says leaders at the organization are doing everything they can to minimize layoffs.
It's significant. I mean, it is a third of our overall clinics that are closing. We are in the process, as I mentioned, really talking to staff, and staff are making decisions.
Planned Parenthood will also continue providing telehealth visits for patients living near the 2 closing locations.
Now, patients have been notified of the closures, and the organization is going to refer those patients who are on Medicaid to providers who will accept Medicaid. Live in Mount Auburn, Katie Amrine, Local 12 News.
Yeah. And so Unc was asking, other than abortions, what other medical opportunities does Planned Parenthood offer? And as you heard her say, they offer a deterrent, right? And what that means is, you can get condoms there, you can get birth control there, and there's different levels of birth control that someone can get from Planned Parenthood, not just pills. Because I think a lot of time when people think birth control, they think of birth control pills. It's like, no, they have different injections that they can get. They have also um, things that they can put in their arms, like these little bars and different things. They have different types of birth control at their disposal that they can use. And as I stated, a lot of these people are on Medicaid, right? So they're on federal assistance. And so that money is drying up. It's drying up. So there were a few questions that I had, you know, for AI online. And I said, can you list Planned Parenthoods that are going to be closing? It says at least 20 Planned Parenthood clinics across 7 states have closed since the start of 2025 or have announced plans to close soon. And this is interesting because if you go back and, find anything on Planned Parenthood, they keep talking about, oh, well, we don't need federal assistance to stay open, with their chest out. Apparently you do. Apparently you do because you're shutting down. You're shutting down, which is not a bad thing. And it's amid financial and political pressures. Political pressures? What would that have to do with anything? Really? Following the end of Roe v. Wade, these closures affect clinics in Illinois, Iowa, Michigan, Minnesota, New York, Utah, and Vermont. Now, it's interesting because New York is a progressive state. So I know that why would it affect them? Because that's where the money was coming from. I think they lied and kept telling people that they had all this other money coming in from. No, you were in poor areas and you were killing poor babies. And it was done on purpose, period. Oh, let me take a break from this real quick and say good morning and have a blessed day. Have a blessed Tuesday. Thank you, Miss Sassy. That's awesome. So Sassy Lady is saying good morning to everyone. And to have a blessed day. Yes. So getting back to this, it said in Utah, the Planned Parenthood Association of Utah closed 2 clinics after the Trump administration froze 2.8 million of Title X funding, which accounted for 20% of its budget. Planned Parenthood of Michigan announced it would close 4 clinics and cut staff by 10%, citing historic threats and cuts to federal funding, although it did not directly lose Title X funds due to Michigan's state level distribution system, right? Because they can put it in other places and to kind of reroute it. In short, that's what that means. But I know I pulled up some other different demographics, but I wanted to pull this because I was trying to find out, like, what are the ethnic demographics of the places that are closing? And it says the available sources do not provide specific ethnic demographic data, such as Hispanic or Latino populations, for the areas where Planned Parenthood clinics have closed or announced closures in Illinois, Iowa, Michigan, Minnesota, New York, Utah, and Vermont since 2025. While it is known that at least 20 clinics across these states have closed or are closing due to financial strain, including loss of Title X funding and insufficient Medicaid reimbursements, the reporting focuses on operational and political factors rather than the ethnic composition of the affected communities, right? Because I was just trying to find out, like, well, who is this really going to affect, right? And I found the stats that they were able to pull interesting. It said nationally, Planned Parenthood serves a diverse patient base. According to Guttmacher Institute in 2017, so this is roughly about 8 years old, approximately 31% of abortion patients were non-Hispanic white. And I know a lot of people say, why would they have to preface it with non-Hispanic? Because there are Hispanics that claim to be white and they're not. So they're Hispanic white. So the non-Hispanic white are just Caucasian people, regular Caucasian people in the United States. 39% were Black, 25% were Hispanic, and 5% were of other races. And I wanted to pull that up because that's important, because people are talking about birth rates in all ethnic backgrounds and coming up, and I know a lot of that is people are living their lifestyles differently. There are a lot of more same-sex couples, right? And they still want children. Interesting. But there are a lot of same-sex couples. There are a lot of people mutilating themselves, so they'll never be able to reproduce or have children. And, then there are people just choosing to abort their children, and it's still, a lot of people, if you look at it, if you look at the woman who, Margaret Sanger, her purpose was to ensure that it specifically, Black Americans would die out. Like, that was the reason why she really championed Planned Parenthood. It wasn't because she cared about women. It's because she hated a particular race. And that's sad that her legacy has still produced this. So I'm glad that the Planned Parenthood is being closed, because they're not providing health care. They're providing death care. And they're trying to mitigate how many kids can be born on the planet. So, however, these national figures do not reflect the specific ethnic makeup of the communities impacted by the 2025 closures. No recent analysis have been published linking the 2025 closures to ethnic demographics. But I can look at the states and I kind of can see their demographic makeup, right? Just by ethnicity. So it says, therefore, the closures are concentrated in states with varying ethnic compositions, such as New York, Illinois, which have large Hispanic populations, Michigan and Minnesota, which with more diverse urban and rural distributions. There is no publicity available breakdown of how these closures specifically affect Hispanic or other ethnic communities at the local level. It's interesting because I didn't ask it to bring up Hispanic people, but apparently it is affecting their demographic. They have a large demographic in some of those areas, right? So, yeah, like I said, again, very, very fascinating. Okay, we're going to get into this next video, and this is one from Kennedy. Oh, and let me get Unk's reaction. He says, not health care, but death care. Yeah, facts. And this is a message from our Secretary of Human and Health and Services. Let's see what he's got to say.
Hi, I'm Robert F. Kennedy, Jr., your HHS Secretary. Let me ask you something. Should doctors make decisions based upon what's best for their patients, or based upon what makes them the most money? It's not a tough question. We've inherited a healthcare system that constantly pushes doctors toward the latter. It rewards certain treatments not because they're better for the patient, but because someone profits. Take what happened during COVID. Hospitals were paid to report staff vaccination rates. Those numbers were fed into the National Healthcare Safety Network, then published on the CDC website to shame any hospital that refused to become an enforcer of federal vaccine mandates. Today, I'm proud to announce we've eliminated that policy by repealing a dangerous Biden-era provision in the CMS inpatient payment rule. And we're not stopping there. We're scanning every corner of the healthcare system for hidden incentives that corrupt medical judgment. What we're finding is alarming. Doctors are being paid to vaccinate, not to evaluate. They're pressured to follow the money, not the science. We've recently uncovered that more than 36,000 doctors had their Medicare reimbursements altered based upon childhood vaccination rates. That's not medicine. That's coercion. It's immoral. It has no place in a constitutional democracy or in a system that claims to protect children. Medical decisions should be made based upon one thing and one thing only: the well-being of the patient, never on a financial bonus or a government mandate. Patients deserve honest, uncorrupted advice from their doctors. Doctors deserve the freedom to use their training and to follow the science and speak the truth without fear of punishment. Doctors should be guided by medical judgment and their Hippocratic oath, not by financial incentives or government mandates. That's what this policy change is about, and it's just the beginning. Thank you very much.
Produced by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services.
Yeah. And I'm really grateful that Mr. Kennedy came out with that, because a lot of times, you know, when you go to the doctor's office, I'm always skeptical of my doctor. I give my doctor a hard time. I'm like, I'm not taking anything, even if you prescribe it. No. That he's, you know, he's gone behind the curtain and he's telling us what he's finding. You know, they're very critical of Mr. Kennedy. Actually, you know, I highlighted him on Mighty Men Thursday last week, and he's still pressing forward. He's not backing down. He didn't have to go in and research any of this stuff, but he is, because he wants everyone to be informed. So you actually have consent. So you know now when you walk in and they're like, oh, you should get this vaccine. You're like, why? Why should I get it? What are we doing here? And you start to make people explain themselves. I did it with my children. They were really pushing the HP vaccine that says, yeah, you know, this vaccine is so they won't get cancer later on. And I asked the woman, I said, well, is cancer a virus or is it a disease? And she just looked. Now, this is a nurse, by the way. She stood there and looked at me and was like, I was like, if you can't tell me if cancer is a virus or a disease, then don't you ever talk to me about giving my children this vaccine. Do you understand me? And she just kind of looked at me and she was like, okay, and left the room, because she had no argument. She couldn't say anything to me. And I'm not one of these people who sits back and just lets somebody tell me what I'm supposed to do or not do with my body, right? We're all different, but we all have the responsibility with our doctors. It's a partnership. It is not oh, my doctor should be able to tell me everything inside and out. And they're just the authority. I cut people off at the knees all the time. Don't you ever tell me how I'm supposed to feel or what I'm supposed to do. No, you work for me. This is my time. And I've decided to allow you in my life to service me. Now let's start the conversation, because that's where the bar is starting, and not everybody has that same kind of energy that I do, but that's how I get down. And Tatas, thank you so much for reposting the stream. Haven't seen you in a while. Hey, good to see you this morning. And these are a lot of the medical things we have to really take back. I'm grateful for Planned Parenthood being shut down. Yay, victory, right? Now we can actually start helping people with health care, because there's a lot more going on than just killing our babies. Again, like I said, why aren't we doing the pap smears? Why aren't we doing the health screenings for, making sure people don't have breast cancer, making sure people don't have heart disease, making sure people have good kidneys? Those are the things. That's the health care that people should be getting. They're not getting that at Planned Parenthood. Planned Parenthood is a death trap. Okay. And it's meant to go in there and kill babies, harvest their organs, by the way, harvest fetal tissue, by the way. That's a whole sick program going on with Planned Parenthood that a lot of us don't take into respect. And Tata says, grand rising to you. Okay. Now our last video that I'm going to get into, hopefully I'll have enough time to get into the news and into all sides. But this last video is something that I heard about over the weekend, and they were talking. I was in a space with the general, and they were talking about HB1 visas. And I remember when I was running for president, one of the things that I brought up, because I do believe that our border should be shut down administratively for at least 10 years. I would love for it to be 20 years, but at least 10 years. And the reason why is because we have people here that have come here legally, and it takes almost up to 10 years for them to get their citizenship. But that would allow us enough time to remove people here that were illegal. But on top of that, I said, all HB1 visas, we need a moratorium on. They need to stop issuing these visas because what it causes is chain migration, where these individuals, all they have to do is work a certain amount of time and they can bring over their relatives and anybody else they want to, up to like 10 people or more, or some ridiculous number, right? And those people aren't vetted. They just get to come over here and live and do whatever. They don't have jobs. They're just living off of the system because they're not living off of the person that brought them over here. Like, it's crazy how the HB1 visas work. But in that space where the general was talking, it's like they're using the HB1 visas to block out Americans. What are we doing? We're blocking out Americans. And not only are we blocking out Americans, they mentioned a website that further insult to injury are jobs listed that could be going to Americans, but they're not. Right? So I'm going to let the video kind of talk to this website, and then we'll check out the website.
Now. Bear with me, because this gets kind of complicated. So to my understanding, the system itself works basically like this. Companies have positions that they currently have filled with an H-1B worker. When a company wants to keep an H-1B employee, they file something called a PERM, or Permanent Employment Certification. This is something that issues a green card to an H-1B employee to allow them to maintain their position indefinitely. Now, part of the criteria for being granted this certificate is for the employer to demonstrate that there is no qualified American applicant who can fill this position. The way that this is done is usually by listing the job as an opening that people can apply for. However, because the goal is to prevent Americans from applying, it works the exact same way as listing the H-1B jobs. Typically via a confusing ad on a local, very low circulation, ideally foreign language newspaper. Once the inevitable zero qualified applicants for American citizens rolls in, they're free to proceed. What Jobs.now does, however, is scrub the labor board filings for where these listings are publicly disclosed and collate them into the format of a regular job site. If any qualified American citizen applies to one of these jobs, it absolutely catastrophically fucks up the PERM application. Now, there's actually an opening, because the right to overstay the visa is contingent upon there not being any Americans capable of filling the position. And because the PERM applications are typically only filed at the end of the visa period, this generally results in the application's denial and the position opening for real. Now, here's the kicker. If once this position is open, you aren't hired despite being a qualified applicant, and they issue another H-1B visa despite having a qualified American applicant on file, this opens these companies up to a slam dunk lawsuit and them getting into an extraordinary amount of trouble. So, if you're an American college student graduating into the absolutely brutal tech job market, do your part and start applying. This is a practice that harms everyone here except for the owners of tech companies who want employees that they can work twice as hard for half as much money. And it is our responsibility as citizens to bring it to a halt.
Yeah, y'all. What? I know, right? I know. It's like when you didn't think it could get any worse. When you didn't think it could get any worse. See, everybody wants to look, because remember a few weeks ago, I was like, why are they making Hispanic and Latin people the face of illegal immigration and saying, so everybody's kind of upset with these illegals coming over here when they are backdoor amnesty all of these other people from all kinds of other countries, India in particular. I'm not trying to pick on India, but I'm just saying they get the most HB1 visas. Okay. And this PERM thing that this gentleman was talking about, that's like backdoor amnesty, in my opinion, because they're not going through the proper process. We don't know who these people are. Who knows who they are? How are they being vetted? And the insult is you're saying there's no qualified Americans? I'm grateful for this website, jobs.now. Everybody take it down. I'll make sure to repost it when I, repost the link. Look. They are horribly treating the American people. Because see, before we just thought that, it's just construction jobs and day labor jobs where they can just get paid, cash, so they're working under the table. No, it's not just that. It's the tech jobs. It's the jobs that they told these babies to go out and get all of these degrees for. And now they're not hiring them, and they're saddled with all of this debt. Remember a couple of years ago was like the lingo, learn how to code. And everybody did. And why aren't these people qualified if they went to school to learn how to code? Right? Yeah. So I'm not going to, belabor the point, but you guys get it. But here's some of the featured companies. You've got Ernst & Young, and this is more so an accounting firm, but they still need tech. Stripe, everybody's heard of Stripe because they actually use this as payment systems. Abbott Laboratories, Meta. Meta has 104 jobs listed here. That's 104 Americans that should be hired at Meta. I did see Mr. Zuckerberg sitting smiling at the inauguration, tee-heeing with people. Why you stabbing people in the back if you don't stop? Goldman Sachs. Come on now. Come on. I need every American that's watching this to repost this everywhere to make sure that we are getting hired, and make sure you track if you don't get hired and you file a complaint, because we need this investigated by the Trump administration. We need our labor secretary to investigate this, to find out why there are so many HB1 visas being issued when there are qualified Americans who are not being given the opportunity. I mean, some of these jobs are paying six figures. Really? And we're not hiring our babies? I call them babies because, my oldest, she's 33. I'm just saying. So they all babies to me. Okay. But I made it bigger on the screen. Like, network consulting engineer is making 103,000. And that's in Chicago. An analyst for ERP applications, 108,000 to 128,000. That means somebody with experience, or at least newly degreed with specification in these areas. And our babies are not getting these jobs. Come on, guys. Come on. Salesforce. Yeah. And, some other things that they were saying in the space that I was in, because if you've ever been in a general space, it gets kind of wild. But what they were saying is they would have to bring in people to fix problems that the people with the HB1 visas didn't know how to fix. Right? And they call themselves white knights. And I had heard that terminology before, but when they explained it, I was like, oh, so that means they just called a group of tech white guys, right? Or predominantly tech white guys, to come in and fix an issue for somebody else. That's why they call them white knights. But I've seen other situations where, I've called on tech support and it was somebody who was Black or Latino, but they were Americans, to fix an issue that who we thought was our tech was an HB1. Yeah. I'm that old. I am that old to have done and had that job. Yeah. But these are things that we need to change and we can fix, right? So again, jobs.now, share it, check it out, follow it, as they say, follow the money, and make sure whoever you send it to, let them know if they do not get the job, they need to find out why they didn't get the job. I don't know how they'll be able to find out who got the job over them. They find out the why not and file a complaint with the labor secretary. And that's going to open that can of worms that we need open, because Americans need these jobs and not anybody else. And Black Flag, thank you so much for reposting the stream. Appreciate you. Now we can get into some of our news. Thank you guys so much for joining me here on Unfiltered Vision News. And I wanted to get into this story with MSNBC. They're splitting from Comcast to change their name to MS Now. We're doing rebranding, y'all, because I guess they're tired of being made fun of. Like, people called CNN the criminal news network. I think they started calling MSNBC MSDNC. Yeah. But I'm like, okay. Black Flag says, today is full of endless possibilities, Black America. It is. It is, definitely. I'm just trying to think, this rebranding is not going to save your content. Just because you change your name, are you going to change the content? Really? That's like somebody not losing 20 pounds trying to put on a dress that they know they couldn't fit in before they bought it. Like, what are we doing? What is happening here? So, MSNBC Left Bias announced it's changing its name to My Source, News Opinion World. Okay. My Source, News Opinion. So, they're letting you know that everything that they say is commentary, not fact. Because to make your name say opinion, then this is all commentary. This is nothing's factual. They can say what they feel. They have put themselves in a free speech space, right? Where everything they say does not have to be documented or backed up with any factual information, but they'll speak like they're talking facts. Just saying, it's all in the name. So they are now MS or MS Now, right? That's the acronym. Everybody's doing these acronym things. As part of its split from Comcast and NBC Universal. So for the details, MSNBC has said it's been growing in the past few months and that the split gives us the freedom to chart our own path forward. And we're excited about where it's headed. The network will be spun out under a new media called Versant, alongside other NBC networks such as CNBC, which leans left, and the Golf Channel. Okay. Wow, y'all got money up. Y'all had fired folks. Last I checked, I thought. Maybe I'm wrong. Didn't they get rid of Joy? And didn't they get rid of somebody else? Okay, I'm leaving it alone. So, fear of Trump. Andrew Prokop of Vox, which is left, described the name MS Now as silly and wrote underneath this seemingly silly story, though are currents of major change and fear in the mainstream media. Prokop cited Paramount's $16 million settlement with President Donald Trump as a potential insider of fear and said MSNBC will no longer have to worry about being punished by the federal government. So bad name change. I'm like, okay. The New York Post, that leans right, called MSNBC's name change the worst rebrand since New Coke, and highlighted critics of the change. An anonymously cited company insider said it doesn't set a great precedent for management to change the name after promising staffers it wouldn't. An anonymous former media executive said, I don't know what's worse, Versant or My Source News Opinion World. Whoever came up with these names deserves to be shown the door. The Post also noted that securing the MS Now domain name may also prove tricky as a few logical choices are currently taken by other companies. So they didn't even do their due diligence and scrub to make sure that the name would be available, right? If they decided to make it into a website or whatever, they didn't do a domain search. This is wild. So wild. I mean, when somebody on the left makes fun of you, they made fun of them, y'all. But I wanted to dig a little bit deeper into MSNBC, right? Just themselves. And they were owned by Universal, NBC Universal News Group division. of NBC Universal, a subsidiary of Comcast. So NBC itself is also owned by NBC Universal, meaning both NBC and MSNBC operate under the same corporate parent Comcast through the NBC Universal umbrella. The relationship between NBC and MSNBC is primarily through their shared news division, with both networks producing newscasts and employing overlapping reporters and correspondents. So I was like, okay, all right. So we're going down. And I said, okay, well, forgot to put my space in. Who owns NBC? I was just trying to dig, right? So NBC is owned by NBC Universal, which is its subsidiary of Comcast Corporation. So Comcast is the parent company. All right. I was like, okay, so who owns Comcast? I'm like digging. Comcast Corporation, headquartered in Philadelphia, is a multinational mass media, telecommunications, and entertainment conglomerate that owns a vast array of subsidiaries and assets as of 2025. The company operates primarily through its Xfinity brand, which includes Comcast Cable Communications, providing residential cable, internet, and phone services, as well as Comcast Business and Xfinity Mobile, the latter being a mobile virtual network operator, MVNO, using the Verizon network. Okay. I was like, all right, I want to keep this going. I just want to know more. Who owns Comcast, right? Okay, Comcast Corporation is a publicly traded company, meaning it is owned by its shareholders. Like, okay, fine. No single individual or entity has absolute ownership. Instead, ownership is distributed among institutional investors, mutual funds, and individual shareholders. But look who some of the shareholders are. As of the most recent filings, the largest institutional shareholders include the Vanguard Group, BlackRock, the State Street Corporation. Where have we heard those names before? Boom. I was like, what? It's crazy. And Brother Mugo, People Activity, hashtag Brother Mugo says, facts. We used common sense and did the right thing when no one was looking. Yeah. Yeah, we did. But guys, seriously. Oh, what? Yep, it's called Victim. Oh my goodness. When I found this, that the Vanguard Group and BlackRock were involved with Comcast. Now, again, this rolls up to MSNBC. This rolls up to, the new MSNBC, whether they're going to be Variant or, MS Now. They've always been a part of Microsoft. That's how they even got the MSNBC, right? But their biggest shareholders are Vanguard and BlackRock. And they've already said they're going to be an opinion news network. So you're not even going to be getting real news, first of all. I'm not saying allegedly. You guys put opinion in your name. You are nothing more than commentary. You're basically going to be like the basketball commentary of news. That's what you're going to be. You're going to be, saying, well, we think this and we think that. Yeah, it's going to be completely opinionated, not based in any facts at all, because you just said your opinion. It's going to be like watching The View, except they'll just be called MS Now. Just saying. That's where we're at. So I don't know what you guys think about this. When I saw this, I was like, whoa, that's intense. Because you don't hear a lot of good stuff about Vanguard and BlackRock, and they're in, and State Street. You just don't hear a lot of good things about these corporations and how they have, messed up basically our housing here in America. And you know what, you guys, with all that said, we can get our country back. We can get our country back. Even though these are the largest shareholders in a tanking, and I say that with all respect, tanking network. A lot of these networks were propped up, right, to just pretty much be propaganda machines, and it's catching up to them because people don't want it. They do not want to be lied to. People want the truth. They want the backup information. Now, see, there are probably not other news programs like mine where I'm actually going, let's research this. Let's look this up. Let's see who is behind this, right? But I want to take the time out with you guys to show you, yeah, this is who's really, as I say, steering the ship. They're the rudders steering the ship with a lot of these corporations. Yeah, yeah. So again, thank you so much for joining me here on Unfiltered Vision News. Thank you so much for everybody that submitted your commentary on what we were talking about today. And like I said, just joining me here this morning for Tell It All Tuesday. So with that, we're going to end the stream. And remember, stay well, stay focused, and stay unfiltered. We'll see you on the next one.